Let me just start by welcoming you all to the opening of the Digital Temple, which we intend to manifest with you over the coming weeks. First, I like to share a bit like our situation and why we thought this Digital Temple would be nice to open. We are a collective from Hamburg, and we are usually working in public space, and we usually really depend on people coming together on like really physical encounters and creating the spaces really within the urban field. But now with this situation with COVID-19, our practice kind of like shifts, and we have to rethink how we can work in the situation. So we had this concept of nomadic temple, so that like everywhere we establish temples, we can build them, but we can also like again turn them apart and rebuild them somewhere else. So this concept really fits into also creating a digital temple now, and maybe you can rewatch it on our Instagram channel. There you have all this content about like why we talk about the temple and why we talk about this verb to temple. And yeah, and we started the digital temple last week just to also to like kind of like open our weekly meetings, which we usually have like as a collective, also to the outside now, because we never like thought about ourselves as like a collective that just exists among us, but we were always open for new people to join. And this gives us now the opportunity to really go global, so that everybody can join in, and this distance which usually is between us doesn't matter that much at this moment. So usually we start our gatherings with collecting the intentions for the meeting, and after we gather this intentions, we go through them one after another. And today we like to start with getting to know each other and to develop an understanding what kind of issues you guys are dealing with, living in isolation, or what consequences the situation has for your individual or collective practice. And the second part of the meeting will be then about developing ideas on what rituals, meaning content, could be included in the temple. And this could be anything from like home concerts over live sketching to panel discussions, to writing a paper and presenting it, or to just developing a project together. And you might have ideas, or you have some friends that could also contribute to it. So before we start, some guidelines for using Zoom. So like if there's a lot of people in the chat, it helps to turn on and off the microphone while the other people are speaking. And there's also the option to raise your hand up. You find it like in the bottom bar, there's a window with participants, and you open it, and then you can click on raising your hands. But this is only an optional, like otherwise, like me as a moderator will notice when you guys want to say something, or you just raise your hands manually. Yeah, and you can also use the chat to bring some thoughts up, or to get a link, or yeah, whatever. And then you have like this multiple viewing options. So you have the gallery view where you can watch all the participants, and you can also share your screen with like the viewers if you like to show something on your desktop. So exactly. So I spoke a bit with Manolo before, and because they only can stay like for half an hour, they will go first with their intention, and they will tell us a bit about their practice, about the urban and health, and how this current situation is affecting their work. And I would like to present the Coronacene Map I worked on and the open archives of Room. So now you can bring in your intentions, like the topics you like to present, and rewrite them down.
I would like to talk about the new phases that. Oh no! Wait. I need to rethink that. Can someone else start?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I can also start. Yeah, I'm Alberto. I'm friends with Ana Lucia, that is also here, and with I think basically everyone, but my two fellow Mexicans that are living in Mexico City. So I say hi to you guys, and I living in Hamburg right now, and I'm also part of Bloom, the collective. And I think for me, the whole situation was also, I was a bit involved with it since my father was not living in China. So he has been living in China for almost 2 years. And so he was like the first information I started to have about the coronavirus. And even though I watched it in the news, it was like my father was always telling me like it's gonna get worse, it's gonna get worse. And then suddenly it got really worse in China, and my father was in quarantine, and still Europe was not in quarantine. And I think in Europe, yeah, like no one really thought it was gonna come here, you know, like it is right now. So anyway, my father got the opportunity to like kind of escape the country. He took a flight because it was luckily for him, it was his vacations that week. So he took a flight and then he went to Mexico, and that's where the things got even worse in China. So they locked down the country and he couldn't go back in. So at the moment he is right now in Mexico, and he is not allowed back in because now China has a kind of healthy population, and he's not allowed back in. And as for me,
sorry, Alberto.
Yeah?
Do you like to explain this further? Because usually we just go to the intentions like one by one, and Panosmico doesn't have the time to stay longer, so that's why they go first.
Yeah, okay, well, the intention would be like only like to see what's kind of the future of like for groups that are working stuff like us, you know, like we have a collective, so our whole practice is kind of changed right now. And I would like to know like what ideas you have had from your cities, I don't know, Amsterdam or Mexico. And for me would be like kind of would like to know just what's up in your cities and your collectives. And because I think everyone here is in a kind of collective, and yeah, it will be just cool to know what are you guys doing. Anyway, yeah, sorry for the beginning. That would be maybe something to talk in the next stage. But that would be my intention for today, like just to know what everyone is doing in their own cities.
Next one. Should I? Okay. Then I will. Or do you wanted to ask someone else? No, okay. Yeah, my intentions are kind of the same from Alberto and Lucas. I'm also very interested in finding out what is the power that we can get out of the situation, since I also have kind of a weird story that I'm stranded in Chile, the homeland of my father, and I found out that the
Okay, your stream is gone. So maybe we go to a friend of Alberto for a second.
Yeah, me.
What was
Anna?
your name again? Sorry.
Anna Lucia, but Anna,
Anna
it's
Lucia.
fine. Yeah.
Oh, Anna, okay.
With one N, actually.
Oh.
As the Spanish Anna.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm very happy to exchange some thoughts and ideas. I'm also very curious about what is Loom actually doing in Hamburg, and what is their different like approaches. I understand it's very interdisciplinary and with a lot of basically a very large wide scope, but yeah, and also how, I mean, going back into the coronavirus topic, I'm very interested in maybe talking a bit about the whole political landscape that this has created. No, like not only in Mexico, but or like that it's my home country, but also in Europe, that I'm now a European resident, and it's just a very different way of dealing with things, and I think it would be interesting to talk a little bit about that. And I'm also very curious about the notion of temple you describe for these sessions, like this virtual temple. And I would also like to actually talk about that, like more like the philosophical intuitions of what you guys had in mind for it, because it's in a way, I'm very interested in these information dynamics on the internet, and the basically, yeah, the flow of information among people, And that's part also of my research project that I finished in my PhD. So yeah, there's a lot of things I'm interested to discuss with you guys, but just to mention some, that will be
maybe just quickly, Ana Lucia is doing a PhD postdoctor, or how do you say in English?
No, PhD, just yeah, soon to be graduated. Yeah, hopefully, if everything goes fine.
And she's also involved with some friends in Amsterdam, and they had this collective that is called Pantitlan, no?
Yeah, Gran Colectivo Pantitlan, or like that could be translated into Pantitlan Great Collective, and we called it like that because we basically joined creative landscape for expressing Mexican spirit, the Mexican spirit, not the Mexican culture about like, you know, piñatas, tacos, but more like the Mexican spirit, the Mexicanity in Amsterdam or in the Netherlands. And Pantitlan, it's a word that comes from Nahuatl that means in between two flags, that it was used for in the Lago de Tenochtitlan, that was the lake that it was the lake where Mexico City now is based on, basically. And in the Aztec times, they used to put two flags in between whirlpools so that the canoes could identify the whirlpools and not go in and basically die or, yeah. So the word Pantitlan means literally that, in between two flags. And that was our concept for the whole collective, like basically making a whirlpool of ideas that could bring together like the Mexican spirit and the Dutch also way of doing things. The specific approach we want to address is art, music, culture, and also food culture. That for us Mexicans is really important, but for Dutch people is not important at all. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. Really nice. So Marcelo, I would say we collect your topic later and go over now to Panosmico because they only have 10 minutes left. Yeah, Manolo, Mariana, would you like to share your thoughts on?
We have a little bit longer time.
We have an hour.
You have an hour? Okay.
Yeah.
So then we collect Marcelo's thought first. So that we have this.
Funny story. First, we have a mobile router, and my father had it in his ass pocket, and he was turning it off with his ass. That's why I was gone. So yeah, my biggest idea is on if it is possible to create the same spaces that we are creating in analog space in the digital space, and if it's possible, what is necessary for that? Like, what do we need to make it like a social experience, since we cannot touch each other? Because I find it fucking crazy that we are right now sitting here with people from Mexico. I'm sitting here in the airport in Chile. We have all our friends from Hamburg there. Hi guys, nice that you're here. So that's my biggest interest. Like, how can this space be the same quality as an analog space, and if yes, how? Thank you.
Great. So then, I mean, like when people join this the Zoom chat, Zoom later, we will just collect the intentions. But I think we're just going to start now with Panosmico.
Okay, great. Well, I don't know, maybe something that is curious, like another funny story, is that along the past 2 months, I've been translating a book, which I have here, which is one of our sources of, I don't know, inspiration and research. It's called Monuments of Progress. And it's written by an Italian-Mexican historian who makes social medical history. So it's about the history of epidemics in Mexico and how the urban infrastructure has helped to mitigate them, or has been one of the sources of the disease and of its spreading. So it's been crazy to be reading all these days, all these news, and at the same time translating a book that is talking about the past epidemics or pandemics and the quarantines. Why? Because it's a lot about how we are societies made up by habits, and those habits are also determined by the shape of our cities. So the question when these kind of things happen is how do you change the shape, and what immediate effects must it have, but also how it will change or pretend to change the way in which people is in contact with the shape of their city, right? And as Anna was telling us, this city has changed its shape a lot of times, depending on the current government or the current political ideology that is being pushed forward by the government. And I don't know, right now, for example, one interesting thing that comes to my mind is that maybe Mexico City is taking some measures against these epidemics, but Mexico City is a center, a metropole that gets people from a lot of different states all the time. So even though you make a measure that is effective for your population, you must have all these people coming in mind, and you can't regulate them because these other states are being managed by different politics. So this is one of the conditions that is now being very important on how Mexico City survives or manages this in a proper sense, or it doesn't.
Mhm.
I don't know. What do you think about that?
I guess in another sense, to talk a little bit more of the conditions, the conditions that we have in Mexico City, which is a very large city in terms of population. Politically speaking and economically speaking, yes, the government needs implementing some measures, but these are only for the people if they want to kind of like listen it to them and follow the rules. We don't have really a very how do you say, like yes, obedience in the social realm, because it's not asked for us to do it, and also because there's a lot of people that need to work in a daily basis to get their money, so they can't just stop and isolate themselves, because that will mean that they will face I don't know, maybe hunger or the source of the water supply that they need to get to every day. You know, it implies them to go out. So in terms of what's happening right now in Mexico City is that the differences between social classes are now getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more obvious in terms of the, you know, the activity that you see in the streets and what everyone can do in terms of a collective. I've seen a lot of, in social media, I've seen a lot of people that are gathering, for example, like baskets of food to get those baskets to the most vulnerable and needed people that now are without a job. We actually are a little bit in that circle right now, or so, for example, the ceremony that we're doing right now, it's not much because we want to do a ceremony and we're freaks, but it's more to help these two people that are huicholes that came to the city to sell their artisans, but because they didn't find much activity in the streets and the city center is emptied, then they asked for our help to get some money. So we're actually like kind of, in a way, we don't want it to buy peyote because we don't believe in that kind of practices. So we kind of like established this, agreement. If we do kind of like a ceremony, then we can pay for their food and their transportation for them to get to go back to their hometown. So I guess it's weird how it shapes each realm, and we're now kind of like clustered in our social scale, but it just shows how little do we know on how these types of things affects very different people.
Yeah, and especially in such a large space as Mexico City, not in terms of territory, but in terms of population, because here, like, the concentration of people is too much. And I think that is one of the premises that you can't actually extract from any study of why are epidemics born. They are almost always linked to an overpopulation of a territory and the exploitation of the resources around them. So in this case, we are like in a very bad situation. And I don't know, going a bit further into what we do, that is working with water and the path that water can show about how a society is built. In Mexico City, we have a very important system that pumps water into the city from 3 different states around us. So we kind of make an extractivism of water of the other cities and communities to administrate this city. If anything would happen to that infrastructure called Sistema Cutzamala, then we would have a total breakdown of the city, and you would have almost 25 million people out of the vital resource. And if these people or we that live here, we would want to use the natural resources, we would find this. You can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the project in which Lucas collaborated with us. Our collective is, I don't know if I can say the same as Loom, but we also try to work interdisciplinary and ground-based. That means that we work in site-specific places, and we try to work from the places, like not from a preconceived methodology or concept, but from the things that we find where we make these drifts. And in this case, it's a river that it's on the west side of the city, and it's a curious case because it's a body of water that flows from a very wealthy neighborhood towards a very poor one in its flow. So you kind of see all the shit that the wealthy neighborhood is throwing to the poor one, and how the poor neighborhood also adds to this pollution of the river. And so our idea was making like a live monitoring of the river after doing all this previous research on the conditions. These ones were the work of Lucas, who made like a fictional marketing provocation campaign to criticize the political image of the country that the government gives to the tourists, and the reality, which is pollution and a very bad managing of the environment anywhere you go, actually. And the other part was like a series of postcards that invited anybody to come and visit this river as if it was a touristic attraction. So further from that first approach, we developed this, which was like a series of stations that could monitor with 5 different sensors the quality of this water to be transmitted in real time in a gallery. My photos. So this is the. No. Okay, do you want to add to that, like about this idea of like monitoring and how it could resemble this meeting?
One of the things that we were trying to do is to transport in a way in real time the feeling, the heating feeling of the river, because this is a very dirty water. It's black water. You can't see anything inside of it, and it's very like highly polluted. And we wanted to kind of like extend our sensitive possibilities into these sensors that we were putting into the water and transporting those to a different territory, which was the gallery in that time. So in a way, kind of you create a link, you create like a umbilical cord that gives you constant information that you need to first you need to learn to how to read and how to connect and how to make sense of the rhythm of that information that you're getting. So in a way, kind of like we dealt with, yes, the reality of what was happening in the river, but also with a reality that we're actually living now, which is doing everything via internet, which is really demanding and really annoying at points, because it, you know, kind of the sensation of the some sensations of the site get lost in translation. For example, so the temperature, yes, a number represents a lot, but you cannot kind of link the temperature with the smell of the river itself, which was one of the things that interests us a lot. So I don't know, in terms of digital tools are really good, but we need to develop more and more understanding on how to manage them and how to implement them so they can become allies and not just assets or yeah, kind of like, oh, this is cool because it has technology. Also was very important for us to use technology that it was very easy to understand, so it can be, ¿cómo se dice replicable?
Replicable, yeah. Like,
for others to, if they wanted to understand the quality of water that they were drinking, they could do it at home or stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to show you the gallery view, but this thing is crazy.
I have a small question.
Yes.
If it's so, you guys did an exhibition of it, like of the research?
Yes.
Okay, nice.
We presented this project into a small exhibition site that it's called Liga, which was okay. So it went through a competition that we won, but Liga, it's a space that shows only exhibitions about architecture and urbanism, which was in a way appropriate to the subject that we were working on. And the competition was about building an máquinas imaginantes, which means
an imaginary machine.
Yeah.
or an imagination machine.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. I see. So in a way, you also constructed a bit like, as you say, like some devices so that people could understand also the importance of measuring or like analyzing their water and how polluted it is or something like that also you mentioned, right?
We wanted to understand the ecology inside the water. So in those terms, not only to see how polluted it was, but what possibilities of that pollution can we take
Nice.
understand. So one of the things that we understand pollution not just as something that it's bad and that we have to stigmatize as wrong, evil, you know, dangerous or smells bad or not wanted, but as an excess of energy that is not being used. So one of the things that we were looking for specifically was gases, because the bacteria that live in that really dark soup, it's most bacteria that produce a lot of gas, and gas that we use in our homes, which is methane gas. That is just like being, you know, it explodes and then it goes into the air to pollute the air instead of using that gas for other purposes. Well, that's one of the ideas. So it's kind of like to get to understand a really bad situation, but not in terms of, again, how we socially stigmatize those problems, but to understand what type of energy and what we are not reading into that energy.
Yeah, like if you have like a really bad problem in terms of water and air, it's not only made by the pollution, it's about a whole context that is putting different elements into it, and we don't have like a real access to reality from our quotidian activities in our cities, in our use of the large infrastructure that is a city. So part of this research is how do you access to these mediums that are allowing your city to survive, but at the same time they are taking it to limits of its capacity. And I think this is part of the things that will be put in question in this quarantine. Like, how much do you know your city? How much do you know the elements that you can actually get, the elements that you can't get?
How does infrastructure even work? How do we get like clean water into our taps?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like that is part of what we have been doing. And yeah, like looking at the actual condition, it's funny to think that we have been putting like the finger into those things in the last, like this exhibition closed 1 month ago. So it was like yeah, it's a crisis and it's closer than we think. And I don't know, like at least we said this. I don't know. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I find it really interesting how health crises like really transform cities, like how Mexico was transformed over like burying the rivers under the ground. And I wonder if like this time with this COVID-19 like pandemic, how this will transform the urban space. And I think this will maybe like it could also have like happen like in a spatial, like in a physical spatial dimension. But I think it will be a lot about digital surveillance, like a totally different, like kind of like spatial sphere that is going to transform the city as we know it.
Yeah, about the surveillance here in Mexico City, I wonder how will that work, because our police structure, it's very highly corrupted, and again, like people are really in need to work. So I'm not sure that's, you know, kind of, you see like examples like the drones chasing people in Spain, and these like cars that now they have in China, you know, and the UK. I mean, the UK it's mad about surveillance, but in Mexico City that doesn't apply in the same way. So I wonder that how that will work, and how people always, you know, kind of like invents ways of skipping the rules. So yeah, and also there's one thing that I was thinking yesterday with a friend that I was talking about the pandemics here in Mexico, and she was really angry, saying like more people, and for people we say women die in Mexico every single day. They died more of that, of the violence, the feminicides in Mexico, than from the pandemics, and no one is taking like any large measure to secure women's lives. So in a way, it's kind of like, politically speaking, it's very infuriating to see now that the world is shaping around these pandemics because it's threatening lives, but that we have so many other levels of violence that it's also threatening lives, that we're not doing, the world is not taking any measurements, big measurements to stop that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the difference with that is that feminicides, they will stay being 10 every day, like for eternity if you want to. But this thing is that you allow this 10 to touch another 100 people, and then you have 1,000 people, and then these 1,000 people, and then you have 10,000 people, right? So it's like an increasing rate, whereas the other is just like the normality that has been accepted. So that's like an element.
Yeah.
I mean, pandemic culture must be about like a lot of people gonna die, but try not to be you, right? So there's like a control, or there's like an amount of the population that it's apart from this, which in this case it's the high class society or middle class society, and the high class it's also dying. I don't know. What do you think about this element? Like really wealthy and people that travel a lot around the world are the ones that are getting the disease. So it's like those guys are the first ones that will face it, and then they bring it in. Like there's no control over them. They keep on traveling and they keep on doing whatever they want, and all the people that stay in the same place, we get it through different canals. But I think that's crazy. Like it's an ill that comes from globalization and the excessive movement of some people, which are just like picking around different places and foods and stuff.
I think, yeah, I mean, I see your point. I think, I mean, what I was discussing with some friends lately, it's like how much attention it got into the Western world when we actually got it, right? When it was in China, it was okay, it's in China and that's terrible, but very sad, but okay. But then once it reached Europe and actually out of the blue, it escalated so dramatically. And now basically all the also the US is like struggling a lot with it. And but of course now they think it's really a real global problem, right? That it's also like attacking many different aspects of our society, not only the health situation, but the way, exactly as you say, the way people live and the way people conceive commuting and doing things, and how how this way of living by some people that we can call them privileged, can also target other parts of their community, no, that don't have this access to traveling and all that. And at the end of the day is when you notice that these things, like how these things evolve, it doesn't really, like the question of who's wealthy or who's not. Of course, the ones that have more mobility and contact are the most exposed in the end, right? Because I mean, even if you go to India and you eat in a market, you might get like food poisoning, or people even that come to Mexico, right? So I think it's just, yeah, it's part of like the globalized world, but I think it's a very kind of very automatic reaction of that we really have no control of, yeah, like microorganisms and diseases in ways we cannot even conceive. I don't know, I just for me, this whole situation of the COVID, it really exposes how we don't have control of anything. Like we think we do, but we really don't as humans, no? Like it's just a bit of a fallacy that we think and we create ourselves to have, but in the end, just, yeah, we got a hit of reality, like with all of this. And yeah, I mean, I do feel that it's very unfortunate, as you mentioned, that because of this privileged way of living, some others also that are connected through a link of just living in the same geographical space, let's say, you also get infected or get the disadvantage of, yeah, being also put in that position. Yeah, I mean, it's a weird. I don't see how this could be like prevented. You know what I mean? It's just very hard to. Yeah.
I find very interesting what you said about the Euro part. That sorry, my niece is right now. Lucia, just give me 1 second, yeah? Ich komme gleich zu dir. Kannst du sie mal kurz bitte einmal? Danke. I find it very interesting that you're like talking about this, the part where this whole perception of the illness changed when it came to Europe, because this privilege that we're talking about, saying that Europe is this kind of stronghold, and it's now showing that everybody's kind of the same. It can be Trump, it can be any politician, it can be a poor man. It is, with all the horrible things that this virus is doing, it is also showing us that we are all kind of even in a way. And that is, I think, one of the beautiful things that it's doing right now.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, at the end of the day, the virus just is a virus, no? I mean, we're all vulnerable of it. The funny thing, it's again like the how the society spheres are basically accommodated, as I think Manolo pointed it out. I think in Europe you can feel secure even if you're from the lowest or to the highest status, because you kind of have a trust in your government, as bad as it could be, even if it's, I don't know, I don't want to mention like bad examples of European governments, but I have a very clear example of my own home country, no, in which I cannot trust it. And as also, yeah, as they already pointed out, like the police is so corrupt, and it comes from the highest in the rank in our political system. So yeah, going again to this notion of surveillance and how to keep track that people is respecting, let's say, the recommendations of the government to prevent infection and all that. I think it just a matter of how people trust the government, no? If they will actually stick to the rules, or if they will actually trust what these guys are saying. And at the end of the day, in Europe, even if there's a lot of criticism of their own political systems, there's a lot of trust because it just, I mean, because yeah, there's a bit more of a stable political landscape in which you can feel, okay, yeah, I hate this guy, even if I'm maybe left wing. This guy that is representing me in my country is maybe more right wing, but okay, but the structure, like the government as a structure, as an entity, really works in that abstract sense of as a very huge mechanism with a lot of components that it works. And in Mexico, all of these components are kind of loose or erratic, or one is like falling down and the other one is kind of, so it's, yeah, it's so, I don't know even how they're going to, I mean, I really hope it doesn't get too difficult in Mexico. I do believe that it's reacting in the very beginning of the whole situation. So before it gets too difficult to control, like the pandemic, which is very good. I think that's a very good advantage that in Europe, it started the whole lockdowns and all that a bit too late. So yeah, I think now this is what Latin American countries have on their advantage, that they started kind of early. So and I think the internet and the information from other countries will help them to kind of, if they don't trust the government, to trust the global opinion, like the kind of the global information about the whole thing. So yeah.
But can I say something, or do I have to raise my hand or something? No, it's a very interesting. It's a very interesting discussion with very interesting aspects. But maybe back to Yuma Nolo, right? What's your name? You mentioned a very interesting point because of the question of classes and of poverty and rich people, let's say. And for me, it's, for example, it's very interesting to see what kind of chaos it's happening when one person, for example, in a refugee camp or in a place with high density, especially in the poor areas, one case of COVID or one infected person can search what kind of chaos can happen. And I think this, for example, is a very social question, because let's say the rich, in a very simple way, they have the possibilities to isolate themselves, to make homework, to a home office, etc. And in different other infrastructures and typologies in urban space, it's not so easy. Also mentioning the dense districts, which are often also quite poverty districts, if you compare it. I mean, there is, for example, one rich district called Hohe Luft here in Hamburg, which is the most densest area, but it's really an exception, because finally it's in Argentina, it's the Villas, and in other Latin American countries or in Africa and Asian countries, you have the other types of informal settlements, and these are the disadvantaged, let's say, areas in these times because of health infrastructure, because of density, because of the chain of infection, etc. So looking on this, it's a very interesting question how also this pandemic we have now is affecting differently different urban spaces and different social compositions, let's say. Even if everybody and also the rich people can be affected, or it doesn't protect them, but I think they have different possibilities to run away or to get health in a medical context.
Yeah, thank you, Andreas. I think maybe we go over to our open archives and our map of the Coronacene now, because I think it fits it really well now to bring this like to a bit like broader discussion about like what kind of like political shifts and also shifts in ideology could occur through this virus, or could not occur for other reasons. So I will share now with you. First, I will present to you our open archive. Can you see it?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay, so we started to collect articles, podcasts, videos about the current situation in a really broad way. There are like, you can see the categories, like some are about urban solidarity, others are about quarantine, even about erotics, or there's some memes, or it's about public space, there's a decroof debate. So they're really broad topics that like find a place in this open archive, and it's kind of meant to collect all of these also with the dates to kind of like follow the change that is occurring to COVID-19, and to kind of like start a debate on how this how we can prepare for it, or also how we can think about the consequences for specifically us as a collective when this is all over. So what kind of like lessons do we have to learn for our own practice from this? And I personally did a small project out of this. I started the Coronacene Map. You have to see it like not too serious, because obviously you can't really map the current shifts of powers, and also the shifts of powers are like changing minute by minute, and it's also not like it's meant to start a conversation about what kind of topics are brought up, what are the winners and losers of the current situation. And as you can see here, we also connected the articles with the hashtags to like the pictures which are in this map. It's orientated on a map by an Italian collective, which they did before, and which was published in the German architecture magazine Arch Plus in German. And they kind of like they had like libertarian down here and authoritarian over there, and it actually helped to kind of like understand the different political spheres. So in this map, we only have the economic right and the economic left, and then the winners and the losers. So when we go to the economic left, there's kind of like this debate brought up by Slavoj Zizek about new communism, and Britney Spears now even shares like socialist posts on Instagram. And you have this whole idea of solidarity coming up with like this, that like everybody is like, kind of like has to apply to the same rules to kind of like fight this disease. I mean, we're not even, and we're not like, it's not like we're all in the same boat, because there are people that have like more possibilities to fight the virus than others. But still, this concept of solidarity is kind of arising right now. And then we have like this trust and expertism right now with all this virologists, and obviously we have the surveillance debate. And then the winners towards the right, I mean, you also have to see that like in the middle, it's more mainstream. So it's not really right or left. It's really like kind of like going towards the right and going towards the left. And in the middle, we have like mainstream phenomenon. And we obviously have Amazon as a big winner, but also Barilla, or we have like the doomsday preppers, and we have like this figures in the US that spread fear. We have this phenomenon that the crisis leaders are really like popular in this time. So even Donald Trump is having like the highest popular rates right now. And then we also have this phenomenon of racism. So Trump talking about the Chinese virus. And then when we talk about losers, we obviously, it's mostly supply chain capitalism, but it's also the workers that are actually working for companies like Volkswagen. But then we also have a phenomenon in the digital sphere that companies that try to like go into physical space, like WeWork or Airbnb, like their concept is really like going down, and it could be that WeWork is actually like not existing anymore by the end of the year. And obviously we have like individualistic behavior, like the spring breakers that still like went out and drunk and spread the virus over the US. And I also fed in some literature to kind of like undermine this kind of like ideologies, and yeah, obviously the culture as well, like towards the left, is kind of losing out in this debate. And yeah, so that is just like a short yeah, insight in this Coronacene map. I don't know if there are some questions towards it or comments.
Well, I think it's really nice, Lucas. I love it. I love it. I think it's really nice. I think in every time that a situation like this comes up, I think it's important to kind of always localize what benefits the whole situation is bringing to some, and what not, and what disadvantages this is bringing to others. Because at the end, yeah, life is a game, and there's winners and there's losers, and you have to also kind of observe what is happening. So I think it's always nice to have a panorama, maybe also made by your subjective opinions, but I think it's always interesting to have this kind of like mapping out of the situation. Yeah, so I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know, like what I was interested in since the first time I saw it is that if we are actually living in an all-connected world in which we are only getting to know about each other's lives and problems and conditions via internet or via web, what I love about this is that it's like a chess tablero, like a chess game in which you can see the pieces that are moving and how they are moving and towards what directions. So if we would want to make this live monitoring of the present situation more complex, and the people to be a bit more conscious about how their decisions are affecting economical flows, then we might be able to put some pressure into some of these things, or to give more resources to the ones that we are like that we support. So in this sense, like to me, this is the interesting part about having this broad panorama, that if you agree with other people about who you want to support, and if this amount of people starts growing, then suddenly you are not only somebody that is trapped into his apartment or his city and you just see like the big decisions going on. Maybe we can transform into a critical mass that actually take some decisions in terms of economy, at least, for example, or yeah, in terms of money. That is what's going to be the preoccupation of most of the people that can't go out to work and that are not getting the salary as many of the privileged ones.
As us.
Yeah, but
the culture workers as well, true.
I don't know, like this is like interesting, you know, like you are actually creating a live monitoring, even though it's not based on sensors or any other shit. It's just like information well distributed and presented.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just asking because it's the first time I'm saying something. I think it's a really cool map and it's a really cool work. And speaking of monitoring, I think it would be really interesting how this map would develop over time, as in to always save the status in week by week, and then to add something based on how everything goes and how things develop politically and economically and society-wise, and to compare the maps after a certain amount of time, because that also shows, or we might be able to show how yeah, I don't know, politics change, or maybe Britney Spears becomes the crisis leader, I don't know. But to always keep the state of, I don't know, like a week or something, and then to continuously add stuff, but also to maybe take something off the map which is not important anymore at that point. So I think, as you said, Manolo is your name, I think, sorry. Yeah, it's a very good tool to monitor the situation from like, yeah, a broader perspective.
Yeah, I would agree, because I think it's very interesting to see how it changes over time. But for me, let's say it's a bit unclear what is meant with, for example, solidarity, you know, and how do you measure it? Because actually everybody here in Germany is talking about solidarity, and it's happening in the districts with a lot of initiatives, a lot of grassroots things are happening actually. But on the other side, also the politicians now, everybody's speaking about solidarity, but I don't know if it's the same they speak about, you know. So that's why it's also a question, how do you measure it? If I see football players with solidarity, it's a difficult question for me. I don't know, it's not big solidarity that the Bayern München players don't take the millions now, but yeah, it's just a more methodological question, or a question of definition also, what you subsumize under under this law. Very
I think this map can never be accurate. I think it can only like be a starting point to talk about it. It can like visualize certain phenomena. So the phenomena exists that the football people like kind of like try to show solidarity, but then to kind of like rate it, it's more difficult. And obviously this map is rating somehow. So that's like what this makes this map like complicated, or like, which is also disputable about this map, that you somehow rate something, but then again you don't rate because it's just a starting point for a conversation.
I think so too. It's not an analytical tool, or like something you can actually analyze something with, like in an essay or in a speech or something, but you just like, I think it's actually a fact that is really good about the map is that it's so bold, you know, it's super blunt. It just, you know, screams words like nationalism and solidarity and collectivism, and it gives you some, you know, a basis to discuss things like we do right now, but it's not meant to be like, you know, a highly politically correct map. It's just a Momentaufnahme.
So I want to add something, because I find it really interesting about the processual change of the map, that it could be maybe a tool that we implement, because right now I think it's just a JPEG, so it's the least form of participatory as it could be. And in the thought process of being open source with all the things we do, I think this map would translate really well into just a web page called coronacenemap.com or whatever, where the things also actually move, and where we can add pictures and stats. I mean, in the end, it's just pictures and names, and we can let also it could be also somehow this representation of the archive, what it is right now, kind of that. But it would be my proposal for the next steps, maybe with this tool.
I think maybe through the map always being linked to the archive, it's already open source, because everybody could potentially bring something in the archive, and this would be reflected in this map. But it could be also on a website. Like, I mean, it could be a map, and it could be, it could be on a website too, like to make it more approachable, and to, like if you just like open it on Instagram all the time, you can't like really follow it, or you, So the website is a cool idea, and maybe there could also be a comment section on the website or something to make it workable, because I don't think that we could, like, we are not the programmers that could program this in a way that it would like function as a game, I guess, that like everybody just like brings in their, like, kind of like plays chess with this. I think that would be really difficult.
Yeah. I think it's a cool idea to bring the map maybe further, but I don't think like at the end, like Hydrum says, this is not an analytical tool. It's like an opener. So yeah, we can like continue to track, because at the end, it doesn't matter if it's coronavirus or the war in Afghanistan. There's always phenomenon happening, no? And things are going to move anyway, independent of what's happening. So for me, the questions is like what I said at the beginning. What are the disadvantages and what are the opportunities? Because to track just movement is kind of like, it's always there, no? It's always happening. So for me, it's more like important to see where is the shift happening, where is the shrinking happening, and to see where is it we can move as a collective. Like for example, for Loom right now, that we're one of our main thing is being like a social structure that brings people together. Like basically, this is kicking us in the stomach, no? And yeah, tracking a little bit of how actors are politically moving is interesting, but I think the discussion is again it's practical. It's like what are we going to do? Like what are the next steps? What are the strategies? You know, so that for me is like what the conversation has to kind of give. And yeah, this is interesting. Like interactive tool. But I think the main thing has to be like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? What's next? You know. For me, that's maybe that's the important thing.
Yeah, talking about what's next. So that is kind of like your question as well that you brought up, like how is like this whole situation kind of like changing like the practice of the collective? And yeah, do you have any thoughts on this, Alberto?
Well, for me, I don't have like any particular thought about how because for me it's like I'm still learning, and I'm still learning about what is happening, and I'm still like a bit passive in everything. But I'm excited. I don't see this as a bad thing. Like for me, it's kind of cool that someone tripped the game and it fell down to the floor, and now everyone's kind of picking the puzzle again and trying to make sense of it. So for me, it's kind of like super interesting what can happen the next years, because I feel like there's a lot of opportunities. I just think we need to talk about them. And I don't know, like this kind of strategies, like what are we doing right now? The digital temple is one of them, and I think it's one tool, no, to how to create output from different persons that are in different places. So I think that's one tool definitely, but I haven't cracked like, yeah, this is like the next thing we have to do, no? So yeah, I mean, maybe I don't know if someone has other ideas that they have thought about in the last days, or I don't know, opportunities, disadvantages. Yeah, I don't know. I would like to maybe hear.
I think it's a good moment to bring in Marcelo. Yes.
Now the Joker comes. No, I was just thinking that we also have some guests that haven't said anything, or what means guests, but Shalan is also there. I don't know if she's still here. I don't want to put the spotlight on her. And Tuho is also there. Since we also want to be inclusive, I just was thinking about maybe giving them the word soon, but maybe they're not there. No?
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Tuho. So maybe you also want to just like state your intentions for being here, because that would interest me a lot.
I came a little bit late and I listened to you guys. Where are you? Are you all in Hamburg or everywhere?
Everywhere.
Everywhere on the whole world. I'm in Chile at an airport. We have people from Mexico, from Amsterdam, and some of the most beautiful city of the world, Hamburg.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. But Hamburg is the mastermind.
No.
So I think it's kind of interesting what you talked about with the collective intelligence and collective cognitive thoughts. and that's the state what we are actually acting, because we are minds, individuals who are spread over the world, and but we have the chance to use the infrastructure to meet together and to discuss and bring some yes spiritual productivity together. And this is kind of I think it's a kind of power, Macht. It's just kind of like the governments, what they are doing, because before the internet time there was no such possibility for the folk, for the people. It was only for the power, for the government, whatever. And nowadays I see a trend that the government discovering the digital place, the digital space, as a new space which can be ruled. And this is led first by China. We are talking about digital sovereignty, digitale Souveränität, because China has built its own ecosystem with everything which what a smart and digital society needs, but for its own situation, dictatorship. And what in the situation what we have in Europe is that we don't have the ability, such big yeah, we have das Bewusstsein, the mind to build something, but not the power and not the infrastructure, because we had the golden time in Europe in the Maschinenbau time, and in the digital time we missed something. I think we passed something. And yeah, when I say this, I think this Corona time, it should give the people time to think about the life and the society, how it is working until now, and what should be made to evolve this, because you can only change so fast you can to survive. Yeah, and yeah, that's what I want to say.
Yeah, I really like this how you say, also want to see the positive side of it, because this is mostly what we are interested in, and what also was kind of the first idea of having this talk, to exchange ideas and also to motivate each other to find out how we can take strength out of this situation. And I also say, like as I also see the way that, as Alberto saw, that now all the pieces are laying on the ground, and we have the possibility to reorder them, to kind of make a new puzzle out of it. And even if it's not that big that the whole society collapsed, it's at least a little bit. And as we saw it, I don't know, in Hamburg, when the war came and all the bombs dropped, that changed the city development. And now we have like a social bombing. There are now empty spaces, there are vacuums, and they will be there for at least some months now. And I really think about, like, how could we maybe also in this digital realm fill these up. And for me, tools like this map or this meetings, and most people are doing it, everybody is trying to do their thing with it, are the, as you say, like, it's the power to the people. The people try to help themselves, and that is for me a very, very beautiful thing to see. And I also like it that we have, like, kind of, I didn't know that, like, I thought like we were 3 people in this meeting, like that we are 9 people, and maybe 1 person is watching on Twitch is for me, it's a revolution. So I just think that we should be aware of that, and I find it very, very interesting and inspiring to hear all of these words from our now Mexican friend collective. I think we can call ourselves like that. So it was super nice to get these introductions, and I now think, like, we should, because we all have these energies and we want to do something, so we also need to channel them now. And for me, this Coronacene Map, even if it's not that kind of this biggest deal, would be just the thing to work on it together. And mostly what I found out is, like, when you have just a project, out of that, there comes a lot of more ideas. But I mean, we're doing it right now with the digital temple, and I would love to to just like have kind of a conclusion from all the things that have been said today. So not to finish it, but to just like to have kind of a thought product out of all of the things that have been said.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can start with Manolo and Rosa, that they have to leave at the beginning. So maybe just some conclusion thoughts about, I don't know, some innovation, strategy, solution, ideas you guys have thought. I don't know, like yeah, something you would like to share.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to actually develop thoughts on projects that we could start like among us to present in this digital temple. I just started today a file, for example, on the history of quarantine. And I don't know what to do with it yet. I just sent it over to Manolo and I was like, I have no idea. But I don't know, like we have this file now, this docs file. I also, like it's in chat, like completely on the top. Like if Panosmico now has to leave, like we can still like stay in contact and we can still think on projects to develop together. Like it can be a paper, it can be another like kind of like visual form, like the map, but maybe like for a different topic. And then we also, I mean, today there are people that don't attend, like Anais, for example, that really was into like bringing like home concerts in this format, or to bring in like live sketching. So these are also formats we could do. Like if you have friends that do music, we can do this too. And I think it would be just nice to collect a bit of these ideas. And it doesn't have to be today, but just like till the next meeting next week. Yeah, Marcelo is having a question. Or have something to say.
I'm just having an idea of the first steps that could be, because these projects that you were talking about in Mexico and also the book that you were translating are already like super related to the topic that is the thing we're talking about here, and that for me could be step one, the exchange of it. So like maybe if you feel free, like we still do exhibitions, maybe we do in Hamburg digital exhibition of one of the things, of one of the projects, something like this, to just like start working on something really small. And mostly I like it when there's something already there and you just try to hook up with each other for like a small thing. And as you right now explained it to us, it could be also something that we invite people to, or there's now a big, in our universities are all closed, and our university will be closed for the next whole semester and will be only e-learning. So we could somehow maybe also we have some contacts to the university still to have like courses for students where you present your project, something like this, you know. So instead of directly studying this next project, I just would love to stay in touch and join forces for the next time.
Yeah. I mean,
this was kind of a question to Manolo. Oh, fuck, I cannot say it. Manolo La Rosa.
Yes, we agree. And we think that the history of quarantine can become like a model of things that have happened, but that actually make us rethink how the movement of commerce and the social relationships and the way in which we relate with objects and resources can change. I think this is like the direction in which we are more interested, because it has a lot to do with your habits, you know, like with the things that you consume and the things that you need, and how do you make this household, right? But right now we are kind of talking of an earth household, and that is beautiful, and at the same time it involves a lot of responsibility, because if we are like this virus is attacking like the old people, like the generation that is about to leave. So this puzzle that is broken, it's a lot about us thinking how we will keep on relating and how we will prepare for further stuff like this. So I think that, yeah, it's really valuable to keep on the conversation, but also to have this set of resources that can come from following the research Lucas already started, and the things that are happening. Do you want to?
Yeah, and maybe we can also do something a little bit more personal, because it all comes to kind of the conversation right now. It's kind of outside what's happening to society, but society is also about individuals and what's happening with our own realm of thinking. So we can also maybe add something a lot more personal, like keeping, I'm just thinking like an idea, keeping a personal journal of how, you know, some things are affecting your own state of mind and your own emotions, and the notions of, I don't know, maybe the sensuality of bodies that are not in touch with others, or what's happening also with that specific, you know, yeah, that things that also affect the way that we relate to society. For example, for me, like I'm a little bit thinking a lot lately in grief, like what's all of the people that lost people now for the virus are doing, like not only to say, okay, I lost someone, but how are they dealing with the grief, or how do we yeah, kind of understand those things. Maybe keeping a journal could be something that, and then share it with each other, so we can understand a little bit more deeper into our own psychological craziness. Maybe.
Yeah, Andreas wanted to say something.
I think Heidrun was before. We cannot hear you, Heidrun.
Yeah, sorry. I muted my microphone, but I think that works. I really like the idea of journaling things as well, and I like it because I already saw people who started doing it when we started going into home office and going into social isolation. That was like 2 weeks ago here in Germany. And Anais actually was the one who started, because she's an illustrator and she like sometimes keeps a journal anyway. And so she started doing it on a daily basis, which I thought was very cool and inspiring. And I'm much more a writer than a drawer, but I started drawing things as well. And if I don't draw, I keep a journal, not on a daily basis, but almost on a daily basis. And I don't know what I'm going to do with it later, but I just think that it's a time where it'll be important to, because you need to look for her other account. It's called The Fish and the Pearl. Sorry.
Post it on
anyway,
the chat.
I think it'll be so nice, not only nice, but also interesting in moving times like these to keep track of how do I feel each day, and how does the social isolation thing, how does the global situation, how does the political situation, but also my very personal situation impact my life on a daily basis, because it already has had such an impact on my ordinary life, which has become the new normal. So things that were new to me 2 weeks ago have already become my new normal. But if I look back at my journal entries from 2 weeks ago, I'm like, oh yeah, true, that's how I felt in the first 2 days of quarantine. So I really like to collect anything which is related to how do we settle into that new routine? What does it make us feel? What does it make us think? And then to like just to have it as an open, no, not as an open source, because it's very personal, but to keep it as our own sources, and then at some point to look back and to try and also work through it. And I think we can make something really great out of it at some point, maybe not right now, although we could share it, which I think, like, if people are open to sharing their journal entries, be it something written or something drawn, that is also helpful, I think, to people who might feel the same or don't feel the same, but to just have an insight. But if we don't share it right now, we will have the basis, we have like an archive of what did we feel and sense and hear, and you know, I think it's a really nice idea also if we do it in different countries, and it'll, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, something cool that is happening, it's really fast, is some guys are keeping a journal of the dreams of coronavirus. So it's global, and the idea is what is everybody like building in the oniric sense around this. Maybe it's not the same that it's been proposed, but it's interesting to think that there's another level of connection in dreams that are also addressing this thematic or condition or whatever. But yeah, I also like the idea of the journal.
So I would say that if anybody's, you know, it doesn't have to become public yet, but if just on a personal basis, I would say it really does make sense to keep a journal right now. And if someone wants to add their stuff to a Loom archive at some point, that's cool, but you don't have to. But yeah, I think if people would always think about starting a journal, maybe now's the time.
It's also gonna be a weird journal, no? Because if you have like not too much to do in your days, like day 300, I did the same as yesterday, but I don't know.
Yeah, but that's exactly it, you know, because on my first days of self-isolation, I had to put so much into my journal because my daily routine was new, and I did things that I wouldn't do, like cooking lunch at home and stuff like that, because I wasn't at the office anymore. And that's one thing that I realized after 2 weeks. What am I supposed to draw or to write today? Because my day was exactly the same like it was yesterday. I had virtual meetings, but that's not a new thing anymore. And I had like a zillion phone calls and I had to go for a walk. But realizing how much it has become a routine is, I don't know, it's something I kind of only realized, or not only, but I mostly realized it because of keeping a journal, you know?
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's also interesting to think about it, like, actually, what kind of reflection are you having in this journal? Because if you're like, in a normal basis, you're like saying, today I went to the movies, today I saw my friend, you know, so you're always like reflecting on this outside, and
true.
Maybe this also is more like a reflection on what did I kind of think today, even though my day was lame as yesterday, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting to see how you can also kind of have this different reflection about you and life, yeah.
And then we can do a really nice and cool diary music project, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm doing a lot of music, and I'm having a good time here in the headquarters of Loom. No one is here, Dennis is not home, Felix went to Berlin, and Javi is in Chile, so I'm basically alone at home. But it's amazing because this place is super big, and it's like being in a bunker. So it's really cool. But I think after like another week, like maybe it's gonna be also too much for me. For now, it's been 2 weeks, but I think after 3 weeks, it's gonna be maybe a bit harder. I mean, the good thing is that the weather is nice, so I can maybe just chill around the building. But yeah, it's gonna be hard. Like in the next week, maybe. Yeah, I think that's gonna be maybe a different conversation.
Mm-hmm. But it'll be 20 degrees on Monday, Alberto. Don't worry.
Well, the thing is, I can take the sun from the kitchen, so I take my shirt off, sometimes my pants off.
That's why we call it Tanberg.
Yeah, and I take the sun in the kitchen, and so I basically have everything here, you know. So
I also wanted to add just one little thing to the storytelling, since I'm really like a gaming fan. Since a lot of time it's a really normal kind of storytelling tool in games to leave journals of people. I don't know if it's the lost spaceship and it's the journals of the people who got mad on it, or if it's like the people that were living in a cave and you just find a letter. And mostly those journals are like a real big part of storytelling of those games. Instead of like animating whatever is happening there, you are putting also this story inside of the head. So it's, in my opinion, still also a very strong tool to as Heidrun said, to follow like maybe the descent into madness of isolation, or how to cope with different things that are coming. And also the isolation topic has been dealt a lot with. I will add some movies. I already looked them out in sci-fi, because this traveling to Mars or the hyperspace is broken and whatever. There are a lot of really good movies about people being alone in spaces and getting mad on it.
Yeah, Marian also uploaded a really interesting podcast about like a group of people that did the NASA experiment on Hawaii. So for 1 year they had to like be like a group of 5 people or something, where like in a cabin on Hawaii, kind of like experimenting how it would be to be on the Mars for 1 year. Like what would it like psychologically do to you, because all of these people didn't know each other.
But so then we can also start to investigate how prisoners feel.
Yes, exactly. I was thinking about that exact thing.
You know, just to mention it, because yeah, it's just 1 week.
That's true, man. That's true. Maybe we have to go to our local jail and just ask.
But it's not about just like really crazy extreme. I think that's the thing. It's personal, and that's why maybe it is also distorting the image a bit when we now also ask like prisoners, because maybe they deal with the isolation the same, because nothing is changing for them. So it's about change of status and how you cope with that. No?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But it's also about trying to understand what type of thoughts with isolation, what thoughts do we have? Kind of when you are outside, then you're dealing with this, massive wave of information. But when you're isolated, then it becomes narrow. And so where those our thoughts go when we are isolated, I think it's the interesting part. Because it kind of like confront us with a different us, with a us that it's more, I don't know, it's just different. Right now I don't have the word to describe it, but I think that's the interesting part. If that makes us think more about the prisoners, then maybe there's something going on there that we need to figure out how to understand that better. And maybe mapping that, it's the interesting part. Like what are the connections between our isolated thoughts that we usually don't share, but now we had something like in our favor, which is time to think about that. And yeah, that would be an interesting, I think, exercise to share and to try to map ourselves in that way, and then kind of like cross the information with each other.
I mean, at the end, it's also interesting that it is this isolation, and then we can try to think about this isolation in terms of like people that are into jails. But at the end, we have this dosed, like, you know, we have this little windows where we can communicate with other people, like for example right now. So yeah, like you say, like our noise that is surrounding us got really narrowed, and then the windows you have are really specific. You know, like when you see a friend, it's a really special friend, because you know you have to trust him, and he doesn't have the virus. So it's like this small window to see a friend. And if you have like a Zoom meeting, also you have this small window. So it's like this, like having like this delicious chocolates, you know, like someone made you for a gift, instead of having this like I don't know, super cheap sneakers. So like you have to really be more more appreciative about like this little windows that you have, no?
And
So
I
it's
guess there,
isolation versus kind of small windows you have to connect.
and I guess there's like also a very important distinction that, I mean, for us, we are kind of just temporary prisoners, and we're also not, I will say that real prisoners, they really have this, I mean, conception that they really cannot go out from that place. And I think that makes the whole process of thought completely different as one of us, or maybe not. Yeah, good question.
I think it's interesting
Will be
because it makes it
interesting.
more clear for them. They know when they get out. We have no
Yeah.
idea. We are like caught in the moment where we have no idea when it ends. And maybe that's even
Yeah.
more scarier.
Hi, shut up, more scary. Life sentence, bro.
You're entitled, privileged.
Yeah, really. In Germany, Malaga, really in Germany. Top 20 countries.
I
No,
would
but
rather
I mean,
go
you can
out on
still
the
feel
beach
bad.
and spring break.
Even if you're like in a position of privilege, you can still feel bad about it.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, as somebody, I think Anna said it before. Anna was your name from Amsterdam, right?
Yeah.
I think it was you because, you know, I also think like a bit, I lost my job, etc. I want to speak too much about what I feel, but I'm really relaxed actually. It's a bit crazy, but I don't know, for us, always Ebola, etc. were far away from the West, you know, from the rich countries. It was Africa, it was Asia, etc. All these countries always had epidemics. And here now it's getting us in our everyday life, and everyday life is changing, and we're in a different mode, meeting us here and not in the Werkstatt or in a real place, just in our homes, in our private spaces. So I don't know, actually, I'm, I don't want to say I'm not crying, but of course it makes a lot with me also. But it's also interesting, and I think I can stand it in the moment. So that's why I wouldn't compare myself with prisoners, but it was just an association I had when you spoke about this isolation thing and how it's changing now. I think this is the interesting question Marcelo said before. It's like now it's changing, we have a change in our everyday life, and I think this change or this transformation and this affection, individual and collective, and social affection is really, I think this is the interesting thing. And also how we go out of it will be an interesting phase again, an interesting period of time. Also, what kind of, now everybody's speaking about, I mentioned it before, solidarity, etc. What kind of values will stay after? This will be interesting. Or what kind of mechanisms of power or privileges will stay, and what other, let's say, disadvantages or loses.
Yeah.
Now it's missing my, you know what, the bad things, let's say, will also stay after the crisis, or we're gone maybe.
Yeah, I think
know.
it's interesting how, like, in most people's perceptions, it's like this, like, it will be over at this one moment, and then we will fall in our arms, we will touch each other, and we will all be completely happy. But this is not how it will go. It will go like in like slow steps, like getting back to a new normal, not to the normal we had before, but to a new normal. So it will be a slow adaptation. So I guess it won't be like this like complete orgasm of like meeting each other again. It will be a slow process to a new normal.
It's called orgy, bro.
I think this is like this keeping the values of whatever we found out in this crisis could be a job for like the collectives or the people who have found out. Like I would like this idea of having like a sink in front of our parties, and whenever people come inside, they wash their hands, because this would much relate to the temple idea of putting your shoes off, and maybe also putting your shoes off, washing your hands and putting your shoes off when you come to a party, because you leave the dirt or whatever you brought with yourself outside, and you come in into a clean space, and like your home. You do it in your home the same way. Maybe we could also like use these small strategies in a very picturesque way on reminding that these things can happen and maybe will also happen again.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Can I
yeah,
add
please
to
you,
that?
because
Sorry.
you first.
Yeah, what Marcelo just said is very interesting to me because, well, in Mexico, not so long ago, we had also like a small health crisis with the H1N1. I don't remember exactly when this was, but maybe 10 years ago, maybe Manolo and they can...
The influenza.
The influenza, exactly.
I think it was 2010.
Yeah, right, exactly. So exactly 10 years ago. And we, I mean, I remember like always my family emphasizing like we all should wash our hands really in detail and always sneeze like this, and all of these habits really stick on me when like since now. And I don't want this to sound very weird comment or anything, but for instance, I've been living in the Netherlands for 6 years, and they don't wash their hands, for instance, not even when they use public toilets or anything. And my analysis about it, and like talking to some Dutch friends about it very openly, is that they said like, well, there's no need, and like my immunological system will kind of handle it in the best way possible, and I just need to trust my own immune system and all that, no? But then I really thought, okay, that's a good argument, but it's also maybe possible that since in this country, like the weather is not as tropical and crazy as in the center of the earth, like in the equator and all these countries, that we have crazy diseases like these mosquito crazy bacteria. We always like wash our vegetables very carefully and wash our hands very carefully and all that. And then I was just thinking now with the whole norms of hygiene because of the coronavirus, that maybe they will they will stick with it, or maybe they will go back to being very relaxed about these hygienic issues. I don't know. So that was just like a side comment of
yeah, but that's what I'm saying, that we are the people who do events, so we have the possibility to stick to our roots, because in the end we had this like once or twice already in this talk. It's about behavior and about change of behavior. And even the smallest change of behavior is not only, it's not, in the end, it's not for me about hand washing. It's about the act of reminding yourself. And this is coming really close to this, what is a temple to us? It's that my house for me is also a temple. And my, if you see the talk we have, Seek Common Ground, on how to temple, Michael, the artist, he's also saying his studio in his home is also his temple, because he's treating it very differently. And maybe we should also start to treat the places that we care for in a temple sense.
Yeah.
But hello. Yeah, but you know,
this is my niece.
Yeah, it's a very interesting conversation, and for sure, I think both of you are really right. Also from like hygienic perspective, it really makes sense, etc. But on the other side, looking also a little bit on the political sphere, it's something what is happening now because of specific political communication and measures that really touch also our rights, our, how to say, Bürgerrechte, like how democratic rights, or moving out, make a demonstration, meet people outside, more than 2 people, etc. And that's why for me it's a really interesting question with the washing hands, because it's also political and medical conversation and communication to do it. But on the other side, we also got a lot of different informations now from politics. Don't do that, do this, don't do this, etc., which are cutting finally also our possibilities of public life. And I think this is a little bit I think it's an aspect what is interesting, is what I'm interested personally, but I think sometimes it's a bit forgotten. Everybody's crying about this everyday life that is now changing, but I think it's important to think a little bit further with which kind of mechanisms of the state are like leading us to this point that we're sitting at home finally.
Yeah, I guess I mean that for me, like that's why for me the whole situation is about two questions: where are the advantages and where are the disadvantages? Like, yeah, there's a lot of opportunities in how we can change our behavior and to being more clean, you know, being more present in the moment when you're with someone and all this kind of stuff. But like Andrea says, all these things that are happening, all these controlled strategies that the governments are putting into action, that no one is really like saying anything because we can't.
Yeah.
We cannot talk to each other to deconstruct what is happening. We cannot gather to manifest, and we're so afraid of what's happening that we are complaining more about exactly the lifestyle. Then why is it that they are tracking our cell phones in Italy, and why is it the surveillance in China, you know, was just over the top, or
yeah,
like how the credits are being just thrown to the people, you know, all these things that I think that is the conversation. That has to be the conversation at the end of the day. Like, what is exactly happening? What is exactly Europe doing in terms of money, politically actions, refugees? What is United States doing with their money and jobs? So I think the conversation is super big, like super big, and to trying to deconstruct all the sections of this.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I think it's really interesting to follow this question of purity back to the Bible or the Quran, because their purity means something about like kind of like an individual that is like that is truly spiritual. But now, kind of like in the Muslim countries, they use the Quran also to say that it includes physical cleanness, as I show here. And I think this concept of purity, I think Panosmico would agree, is really embedded in society in a way that goes beyond health issues. That goes into like really deep, like philosophical questions. And I think it's really interesting to follow the history of, or like this philosophy of how to purify yourself into this drive for cleanliness, which we will even see increase like in the following years. So I mean, this is really abstract, but I still think it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, it's like the idea that the purity or the cleanness, it's a moral issue. So if you are clarified, if you are white, if you are like clean, then you are good. And it's, I think, the same thing that Alberto is saying, like all of these, or Andreas, all of these new measures are meant for us to be safe but good at the same time. And if you are not following, then you are either ignorant or stupid or a bad person or a suicide.
Anarchist.
Yeah, or an anarchist, right? And it's like what a set of things are also happening. Maybe this would be another strand of the research that is cool. When Alberto was talking, I was remembering a conversation I have with a friend that decided to leave the Mexico City to go to Yucatan because of this problem. And we were trying to make a countdown of all the protests that were frozen because of this virus. And you have the Hong Kong problems that were like really bad a few months ago. In Mexico, you had the feminicides or the feminists movement being really strong, and now it's totally stopped by this. In Chile, you had the constitution renewal going on. So it was like a breaking point that was going to be still more active because of the spring and all the hot weather, I think. And now it's like stopped. So maybe it would be interesting how many of these quarantines that we have already on the archive, that how many social movements coincided with them, and how many of these were like
I think
frozen.
that's really interesting, is that to purify a society always means to bring it in line. So that's what like the Quran did. That is like, even so now it has to happen in order to stop the disease, it will still bring the society in line. I mean, when we look to Hungary right now, they're using this disease to kind of like give them like infinite power. So like the law, like the parliament in Hungary can't interfere anymore with the politics of the president if he is not agreeing to it. So to purify in a political sense means to bring the people behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you just said, and what all of you, the three of you, Alberto, Lucas, and Manolo, and Marcelo also, like to kind of keep track, like what are the hidden factors and the hidden characters of this also of this whole situation, because for sure there are I mean, a lot of, exactly as Manolo said, a lot of social movements are stopped in the physical realm, no? And then it's just via like internet that we can make an opinion, which is still very limited, no? And it's also very filtered in a sense. So yeah, I mean, I think that's super interesting to keep track on that. What is not being said, or like what is been occurring like below the table, no, of this whole situation.
Oh, we have a new person joining us. Mitsu from Harvard, our star guest of the evening.
Oh, directly out of Harvard. No, she's she's acting like she's in Harvard.
Hi everyone.
Hey, how are you?
Hi.
I'm good. I'm not actually at the library. It's just the background, of course. Yeah, happy to join. Sorry of the delay. I had a class and then I run late, and yeah. Yeah, sorry. Continue where you were. Don't want to interrupt.
I guess just to quickly in the last comments to make a thought about that. I think it's really important that, like you say, like we noticed that, of course, a lot of socio-political movements just got stopped because, like, the feminists in Mexico, they're not getting out. The students in Chile, they cannot protest. The Hong Kong. So of course, so maybe one question is like, how can we translate this pressure to the institutions that was already on the streets? How can we translate it on a digital space? Because, like, I mean, the persons that are in power, even though this is a real virus or not so real, whatever, they are gonna get comfy at one point when they see that nobody's protesting and nobody is really doing anything because they're so scared, and they're gonna take that space, you know? So I think one question is really important: that how are we gonna translate this pressure to the authorities, that if we do agree with something or we don't agree with something. So I think that would be a really important question to put. Yeah, how is it gonna look, this pressure to governments or companies or people that are doing not right things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also just add, because we had read a lot of words like revolution, anarchist, and whatever, and now also talking about the revolutions that have happened and now are stopped. I think to just say it in words, said that now the collective from Mexico is right now on the toilet, but we are kind of already a movement. We are people who are organizing ourselves for stuff that we are interested in, and we are, in my opinion, outside of structures that are whatever governing us, and it is, I think, our mission and our position to what you are saying, to find a translation for that, because this is what we're doing. We are getting people together And if we just would do it, to just party around, we would be like a party collective. But this is not what we're doing. We are doing it because we are looking for something. And I think this mission of translating the movements, and we have them in Germany also, but they are maybe not so visible on the streets as they are maybe in Mexico. Could be one of the strategies that we are working on right now, to find a way on how to do a digital protest or something like this. That would be something that is really interesting. I mean, 100 people can go in, like if we fill one Zoom channel with 100 people who all just put out, I think that has been already been made, no? Like somebody has done it already. So we, instead of going on the streets, we just meet every Monday in a fucking big Zoom channel, and everybody is saying, damn it, I hate it that women still don't have equal rights, or whatever their point will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it's good that you mentioned this word translation, because for me that word is basically the concept right now, no? Even though it's a super easy concept to understand and to grasp, the practical side of it, like how do you translate the practice of collective to the digital space? It's really hard, no? Or how do you translate the protests in Chile into the digital world? So how do you translate life into a whole virtual reality scenario is actually super hard. Or how do we see this working, you know? And I think that's where the questions are right now. How do we do that? How does that look like? How is that done, and stuff like that?
That's a very interesting question. I mean, I think also like how the medium changes completely, like the way to address certain certain issue, no? For instance, there's been a lot of this in the past, no? For instance, how there was in the 90s like a very strong hacker community that they were basically at some point they developed some sort of they were the initiators of some sort of Bitcoin. It was not precisely Bitcoin, but a similar one. And they were protesting the way in which economy and like the value of money was defined, no, in society. And there's even a documentary about it. I don't have it now in my mind, but I will try to come with it next week. So yeah, just as a reference, so that how people has protest like digitally to some
you can add it to our archive
issue. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, this would be interesting. Or let's say I would be also interested in this, how this digital time actually, or this digital dominant time, how people express themselves in kind of a public, or as a community, or as a community of interests and political views and political actions.
I mean, in the social media world, there is kind of funny things, like when there's a YouTuber that has a beef with another YouTuber, he says to his fans, go to his channel and write shit. And then like all the fans go to his channel and they write bad comments. And by writing bad comments and writing dislike, they can get his platform down, you know? So there are things that we're not aware, because they're so, you know, it was so way before, like YouTube, like, yeah, like, you know, being a YouTuber or being a fan in a YouTube channel, what is that, you know? But that's right now where the conflict of power is happening.
Yeah.
And like you said, yeah, we have to learn all this little stuff that people do.
And I think it's really interesting that like right-wing politics are much better than left-wing politics in doing that. They really know how to use like the digital sphere. I don't know, maybe Mitsu, you live in the US. I think especially in the US, like with like channel, like, I mean, they like Infowars, for example, they're not even allowed anymore to be on YouTube, but they still find their ways to like spread their message, like their far right messages to the public. Do you have any insights on that?
Infowars.
Like it's not my area of expertise. What I would say, there is a lot of like a movement around censorship in both social media, in the internet, and everywhere. So you'll have to factor that in, and also like how there was this really interesting project that I saw last year about sort of like a jury duty for the internet. So like people would actually be qualifying what is right to censor or not. You understand? So like, you know, like Facebook blocks this automatically. And then what if like when you go into Facebook, you have the option of like, why is it censoring this? Is it because it's promoting hate speech? Is it because it's promoting, I don't know, racism, like specifically? And then, or is it just like an image, but it's actually having like another purpose, etc. So like moving courts and trials into a digital platform where people can actually voice what machines can like not really censor in terms of morals and ethically abuse. I don't know if something like that would actually be interesting in trying to replicate that. And I can connect you with the girl who did this experiment, and she has really interesting data in terms of like participation and how the whole processes change if you were doing the duty at the same time, or if you know we're showing like results and how that was influencing other people's votes, and then who could actually participate. Was it supposed to be voluntary, or was it going to be offline? And then based on those, what are going to be the answers of the person? So yeah, I guess.
I think this is specifically interesting, like looking at censorship today, because like Facebook was always criticized for not like censoring like false news or whatever. But now with the coronavirus, they're really kind of like on track in censoring everything. And even Bolsonaro, like Twitter is thinking about like blocking the account of Bolsonaro because his messages don't comply with the health authority. So it's interesting how such a special situation is changing the practice of like big social media companies in terms of like how they like enforce their power, whom to block or whom not to block. Yeah, Marcelo?
Yeah, I just want to quickly say goodbye because we are boarding now and I will finally come home. I want to just say a big thank to all the people for their precious time, and I would love to see you all again next week. Just wanted to keep this out. Big love for everyone, and see you next time.
Have a good flight.
Bye.
Well,
Guys, I also need to go actually to make some dinner.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
But it was a pleasure, and yeah, let's keep in touch. Actually, that one of the very nice things about this whole situation is that I could connect with all of you, because otherwise I will have to go to Hamburg, I guess. So that's really nice. And yeah, I mean, I'm in for the future sessions. Keep me posted.
I'm in for the future.
Nice. Yeah, I think we do this weekly from now on.
Cool.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.